Hi there, this is Phil from PhilFX, and we've got another Maya tutorial here. And today I want to discuss how you bring in images into Maya and you can use them as reference images for modeling. This is probably one of the most basic things that you want to learn. If you're going to do any kind of modeling at all, you want to be able to know how to get pictures and bring them in and scale them to the right size and then use them for reference. Now, this is probably the most single common basic way that people do modeling in Maya, so it's a pretty important skill to learn. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got a project that I've done before, and what we have here is a three-view set of images that are the Red Baron's Fokker 1 triplane. And just as a point of interest, where I got these from is there's a website you can go to that's called theblueprints.com, and if you go on their website, they have just a ton of all kinds of different objects. If we go to the blueprints page and scroll down here, you can see that they have cars, motorcycles, buses, weapons, tanks, planes, World War II planes, World War I planes, science fictions, just about anything and everything you can think of. And these are models that have been constructed, and they're either the best ones are Adobe Illustrator models, which are vector based, but they also have a lot of JPEG files. That's where I got the Red Baron. And if we go to the page where I got that, I went to right here. I hammered through and went through the World War I airplanes, and that particular airplane that the Red Baron flew was a Fokker 1 DR1 triplane. And what I look for when I'm looking for pictures, you see these check boxes on their side here. If we scroll up to the top, what that means is there's a front, top, rear, and a side view. So at a minimum, you want something that will give you a front, a top, and a side view. The rear view is nice, but in general, you want at least these three checks checked on the image that you're looking for. So you have a front, a top, and a side. So if we go down here, again, I scroll down to the Fokker DR1 triplane, and if we come right to here and we click on this guy, we can see that we will get a front, rear, and a top view. This one actually happens to be black and white. I think the one that I clicked on before was actually in color, and that was this guy. Yeah, that's the one I used. So here it is. So here is the Fokker 1. You can see it in color, and this is the image I got. And if you join or pay, you can actually get a vector image. All right, and that may be what you want, but actually you can download a JPEG image for free, which is what I did. So I just downloaded the JPEG image and got that in, and then what I did is I went into Photoshop and I did some cutting and pasting, and you can see what that looked like originally. And originally the image looked like this, and this is what it looks like when I downloaded it. Then I put it into Photoshop and I did some cutting and pasting, and I created some guides. And the reason I did that is I wanted to create some images where the size of each image was exactly the same. This isn't an absolute positive requirement, but if you can make the images the same size, it does help to make your life a little bit easier when you're working with it. So that's what I went ahead and did. I went in and created three separate files. I created a file for a top view, a front view, and a side view, and these are all the same size. Notice too, you can see that it's very clear from the front and the top view at least that the scale is the same. It turns out that the side view is also at the same scale, but if you look at the edges of these wingtips from here to here versus down here from here to here, these are the exact same size. Again, not an absolute requirement. Oftentimes when I'm taking reference images, I just use my iPhone and I try and get it as close to the same distance as possible from the object when I take a front, top, and a side view. but you don't always get it perfect, but you can scale things within Maya to make up for that. So let's go ahead and we can see this setup that I did right here. This is the finished product. So let's start with a clean file and I can show you how I brought those in. So we'll make a new file. I don't want to save anything, and you can start. There's two ways basically of bringing in images. One method of bringing in images is you put them in the image plane of a camera. I haven't talked about that too much, and actually I'm not even going to demonstrate that, because while it can be done, and there are cases in particular when you're trying to do CGI on a video and you want to put that into video, you absolutely need to bring in that video into the camera plane of the image plane of the camera. But when I do reference images, I much prefer to create a plane and bring the picture images that way. So the way to do that is I can either create a polygon plane, or in this case what I prefer to do is create a NURBS plane. The reason I prefer to do a NURBS plane is it makes the texture mapping just a lot easier. When you bring it in and you put it on a NURBS plane, I don't have to deal with UVs or anything like that. I can just paste the picture in and it works perfect. So I got surfaces, and we'll just click in here, and I don't care what the size is at the moment. I'm just going to grab it, and let's go in here and we'll put this in at the origin. So we place that in at the origin and we made a NURBS plane. Now the thing that we want to do here is we want to set the width to the length ratio to the proper size. Okay, so we have the patch that we created, the NURB patch, and I talked about the fact that we have this, if you click on the NURB patch in the channel box, we see this width to length ratio. This is the ratio of how wide is this patch versus how long is this patch. Well, we want the width to length ratio of this patch to be the same as our pictures. So if we go up here and we look at our source images, we see that the width of my images are 1044 and the height is 720. So the ratio would be how many heights go into the width here. So if we get out my calculator real quick, and excuse me, but I work on a RPN calculator. It's just the way I've always done things. So if we take 1044, we enter that, and we take 720 and divide it, we get a width to length ratio of 1.45. So if I go in here and if I say I want my width to be 1, then I want my length to be 1.45, that length. Okay, so that is the size of the patch and the ratio that we want of that patch, so it equals the size of my picture. And all of my pictures end up, are in my case, are exactly the same size. So the next thing we want to do, we have this NURB patch and we want to put that picture on there. Well, what's the best way to do that? Well, right now the color of that patch is the default Lambert shader, and you don't want to add anything to the default, so we want to add a new shader to this. So if I take this and I right click and hold down, and we go down to assign a favorite material, and I just say Lambert. Okay, so we'll assign a Lambert material, and let me give this a name, and we'll call this top view shader. All right, and then we go into the shader itself and we get the color. So if I click over here for the color, now we want to use a file, right? So I click on here, brings this up, and I want to use a file, and now I go to my channel or my attribute editor and I get that image. So I go over here, it's going to load a file, and we go in here and I'm going to bring in this top view. Alright, so we say top view and we say OK, open that up, and now you can see that we have the top view in here. Now, I have currently my viewport settings set using the 6 key where I show texture maps. If I hit 5, shaded display is on. If I hit 6, now I can see texture maps. So if you're not seeing your texture map, make sure and hit that 6 key so you see the texture map. Well, we're close, but there's one slight problem. You can see that the image is rotated relative to the width of the length, and so we need to take this image and rotate it by 90 degrees. Well, we can do that if you go to the Place 2D Texture, and right down here we can rotate that image, and you can see it real time. Alright, so I can take this and I can rotate this depending upon how I want to put it. I think for the case of what we have right here, I'm just going to do this and say 90 degrees, and now we have that image placed, and it's placed correctly for a top view. Alright, and if we go to the outliner, we can see that we have the object placed in there, and we have our top view. Alright, so now we need two more views, right? We need a side view and a front view. So I can go in and I can create two more planes, but actually I think a simpler way to do this is I just go into the outliner and I duplicate it. So I do a Command D and I duplicate that, and we'll call this side view shader, and then take this one and duplicate it again, and we'll call this front view shader, and take the side view, and we want to rotate that. So let me hit E, and we want to bring that up, right? And I want to bring that around so I'm seeing the side view. And if we look at our channel box, basically I want that to be 180, and we want the rotation here to be 90, correct? And so let me take this and I'll slide this out a little bit, and on the front view I want to take that one and I'll rotate that, and that needs to be this way and needs to be that way. So we want 90 degrees there and a rotation X. We want 90 degrees there and a rotation of Y. And I'm going to take and push that out a little bit. Now, at the moment you can see we have the same image on all three planes. That's obviously not correct. So how can we fix that? Well, it's really quite simple. I go in and I click on this one, and I'll just assign a new shader to it. So this is my front view, and I assign a Lambert, and I'm going to call this I put the new shader on it rather, and we click on here to get a file, get the file, and we want the front view. So I get the front view, open that up and put that on there, and this, you're probably going to have the same kind of issue. So you can see that it's rotated wrong. So we go to our Place 2D Texture, and it's real simple to fix. I just take and turn that, and I make that 90 degrees, and now it's flipped the correct way. For this guy, we do the same kind of thing. Right click, assign a new material. We'll get a Lambert. Go in, let's get the color. It's from a file. Get that file, and I want the side view. Open that up, it's placed. Same kind of thing, we need to rotate that, and so I rotate that 90 degrees. And that places that. So now we're almost there. A couple of things you can see real quick. Obviously the top view needs to be, the whole image plane needs to be rotated relative to where things are. So I can grab that whole plane, go into my channel box, and we want to rotate that this way. So that's a minus 90 degrees. Okay. And then the last thing you want to do is, here's where you adjust any scaling. So if you brought your pictures in and you took them by hand, like I said, I went to the trouble to try and make sure most of my scaling was all the same. But that being said, things may not be exactly equal. So what I need to do is verify that my scaling is exactly the same. So I have a top view here and I have a view of my wings. So I want to know that these wings from here to here are exactly the same as these wings from here to here. The way to do that is actually quite simple. So I grab this image and I just slide it. And notice I'm grabbing just the axes so I can bring things down. Alright. And then I take this one and I pull it out. And now if we go in here and zoom in, I can take a look at these and I'm pretty close. Alright. You could argue maybe that I might need to scale one versus the other. What I'm looking at right here is I'm seeing these edges, seeing how that edge lines up. And if I go over here, I'm looking at how this edge lines up. And it's a little bit different. It's not quite exact, but it's pretty close. All right. The next thing I'm looking at in terms of alignment is I look to see is the center of the plane lined up relative to my coordinates. All right. And you can't do that from this view. You really need to look at the three views. And in the three views, I don't have the 6 enabled in each of those. So if I go in here and hit 6, I can see that. Hit 6 in that one, hit 6 in that one. So now I can see the views relative to the grids. And if we look at the top view and I zoom in, we can see that it's pretty close. And actually what you might want to do, and this actually is the way that you end up modeling, is you want to turn on your X-ray view. Alright, so if I put this in X-ray, now I can see my grid overlaid on top of the plane. And now you can see that it's pretty doggone close. There's maybe just a little bit off, and maybe there's just a little bit of a twist, but it's close enough. You know, there's a question as to just how anal you want to get with some of these things, and for me, this is close enough for what I want to do. So let me turn on X-ray view here on this one. Same kind of thing. I can zoom in and take a look at that. That looks pretty good, pretty dead center. All right, and then we'll look at this last one. Turn on our X-ray view, and there we can see that. Okay, now the last thing you want to do is you want to decide how you want to line things up. And when I say line things up, you've got a zero reference plane in world coordinates here, and the zero reference plane is right where the grid is. Well, you can see right now that the wheels are below the grid, and there really is no right or wrong way to do things. It depends on just how you want to model and where you want to do things. For me, when I modeled this airplane, I really wanted the wheels to be at the grid. So if I go down here, we go back into our quad view and I select this guy, what I want to do is I move him up so the wheels pretty much are lined up right on the zero grid. All right, and that means that in the front view, same kind of thing. I need to put those wheels right on the zero grid. I take those and I put them down. Now you can see there's a glitch in the picture. Actually, there's part of that wheel was cut off. I probably did that when I was working with Photoshop, and that really isn't going to hurt me for modeling's sake, but you can see that there's a bit of a glitch in how I put things together. And then this last one, you say, well, how do I line up the top one? Well, you line up the top one position wise because you make the body line up with the side view. So if I have my side view is now lined up where I want it relative to up and down, what I need to do then is take this one and let me slide him over here and bring him up, and I want that one to line up essentially with where the plane is. So what I do is I line up and grab. Notice again, when I grab and slide this around, never grab the box in the inside. I'm just moving one axis at a time. And so I take and I slide this so that cowling is pretty much lined up. And that looks pretty good right there. So the cowling, what I'm looking at are the edges right there and right there. So I have this from front to back. It's lined up pretty good. So then I take it and I line it up that way. So that gets that alignment. Alright, so then we take it out this way. And I can take this one and bring it forward. So I can see how this one aligns with the wingtips. And that looks to be pretty close for that. Alright, so now we have our, I'm going to take this and I can just push this down so this is out of the way. So now we have everything ready and we can actually start our modeling. And so the way I typically model is I go in and I look at what's a common shape to start with. In this case, if I was going to model the fuselage, I'd start with a polygon box. So I go to polygons and I'd get myself a cube and I'd put that right in the center. And then I'd take and let me drop my move tool, and I would go in, and that's not what I want. I want essentially vertex mode. And actually, I know what I want to do is go into object mode, grab this, and go into our 3 views, and I'd start to scale this relative to how it fit with everything. So if I took this and I'd want to shrink this down, and I'm actually going to take this and I'm going to model this, and first I want to move this up, place it right around there, and now I'd want to I'm going to take and set this so I'm just pretty much on the back. Maybe scale this just a little bit more, bring this in, and scale this down just a little bit. So I'm pretty close to that basic size right there. Go over here and open up this one, and so now we want to get down to the width of that fuselage, get pretty close to that. And this essentially is a good starting point. Now where I'd go from here, it depends. Everybody's got their own favorite way of modeling. I mostly work by moving vertices. So I would go in and go into vertex mode, and I would select those vertices and I would scale them down and bring that up. All right, you can see how that is looking right there, and drop those. Go into vertex mode again, select just those bottom ones, take those guys and move them up, and essentially you just start going working your way, moving vertices, moving faces, and going from there. So this is really not meant to be a discussion point on modeling. It was really just how to set your basic 3 views up so you can get started with modeling. And we've done that, and got a little bit of a start here on this model, and hopefully that helps you out in trying to import images and set things up for modeling. So this has been Phil with PhilFX, and have yourself a great day. Bye.